She walked into my room naked, smiled confidently, and claimed my bed as hers. Captain Liam McAllister had been through a lot during his time in the Earth Star Fleet. A veteran officer, he'd negotiated peace treaties, led expeditions to uncharted worlds, and survived countless dangers. Yet nothing could have prepared him for the strange encounter that would unfold in his quarters that night. It was late, and Liam was finally back aboard the starship Dauntless, after weeks of tense negotiations with the Rylix, a powerful alien race that had kept humanity on edge for years. The air was thick with exhaustion as he walked down the narrow hallways, his boots clicking softly against the metal floor. He'd been dreaming of a warm shower and a quiet night of rest. Little did he know, his plans would be completely upended. He reached his quarters, the door sliding open with a soft hiss. Inside, the dim lights gave the room an almost peaceful glow. A neatly made bed, a desk full of data pads, and a small, flickering terminal, everything looked normal. But something was wrong. Something that didn't belong. In the center of the room, standing completely naked, was a woman. Her skin shimmered softly in the low light, and her long hair cascaded down her back like liquid silk. Her presence was both startling and magnetic. She stood there as if it was the most normal thing in the world, gazing at him with an expression that was a mix of amusement and confidence. Liam froze. His first instinct was to ask who she was, but the words stuck in his throat. Was she a new crew member? Had he been assigned a new partner without any notice? But nothing about this made sense. No one on his crew had this aura, this presence. She was different. "Are you going to stand there all night, or are you going to introduce yourself?" she said, her voice smooth, like velvet, yet commanding. She didn't seem at all bothered by her state of undress. Liam blinked, still processing the situation. He had dealt with his fair share of aliens, but nothing like this. Nothing at all. Finally, he managed to find his voice. Who are you?" he asked, trying to sound authoritative, though his heart was still racing. The woman smiled, a knowing smile, as if she had anticipated this reaction. "I'm Zira," she said, stepping forward casually, as if walking into someone's home was the most natural thing in the world. "And I'll be staying here tonight." "Staying here?" Liam repeated, his mind struggling to catch up. "This is my quarters. How did you—" "Does it matter?" she interrupted, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You're Captain McAllister, aren't you? The one who just negotiated with the Rylix. I've been watching you for a while now." Liam's mind raced. Watching him. Who was this woman? A spy? A secret operative? He didn't trust anyone who showed up in his room unannounced, let alone someone who claimed to be watching him. He took a cautious step back toward the door. "I think you're in the wrong place," he said firmly. "I'll have security escort you out." Zira tilted her head slightly, still standing calmly in the middle of the room. Her eyes seemed to glow with an intensity that made Liam feel uneasy. "No, Captain," she said, her voice low and calm. "I'm exactly where I need to be. This is my bed for the night." She gestured to the bed behind her, a confident smirk curling on her lips. Liam blinked in disbelief. "Your bed?" Zira nodded, her gaze never leaving him. "You see, humanity is intriguing. You've done well, Captain, with your little peace treaty and your strong alliances. But I'm here to see if your species, are really worthy of the galaxy's respect. I'm here to test you, Captain McAllister, to test humanity." Liam stood frozen, trying to make sense of her words. Test humanity? What did she mean by that? His mind spun, trying to connect the dots, but the pieces just wouldn't fit. "You're testing me?" he asked, his voice growing firmer. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" Zira smiled, the look in her eyes almost playful. "It's simple. You'll prove yourself. Or fail. That's how these things work. But don't worry, Captain. I'm not here to kill you. At least not yet." Liam was about to demand more answers when a sudden chill ran down his spine. There was something not quite right about this whole situation. Something he couldn't put his finger on. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Zira stood there, unbothered, while Liam tried to regain some semblance of control. He wasn't used to being put on the back foot like this. He was a trained officer, a leader. No one had ever caught him off guard like this before. "Why me?" Liam finally asked, his voice steady, though his mind was still reeling. "Why now?" "Because you represent humanity," Zira replied, her tone serious for the first time. "I'm here to see if your species has the strength to survive, to see if you're ready to take your place among the stars. And whether you like it or not, Captain, I'm going to be the one to decide that." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. There was no mistaking the weight behind them. This wasn't some random encounter. This woman, this Zira, was here for a reason. She had power, something beyond anything Liam could immediately understand. "And if I refuse?" Liam asked, despite himself. Zira's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. "Refuse? Oh, Captain, you misunderstand. You don't get to refuse. You simply get to prove your worth." "That's all." Liam hesitated. His military training kicked in, and he immediately started thinking of ways to deal with the situation. Ways to get Zira out of his quarters, report her to higher command, figure out who she really was. But something stopped him. There was a strange pull about her, a sense that maybe he should hear her out. For a long moment he simply stood there staring at her. She met his gaze, unflinching, unafraid. Her confidence was unsettling. Finally, he took a deep breath, deciding to play along for now. "All right, you want to test humanity, fine, but I don't appreciate being treated like some sort of experiment." Zira smiled again, her eyes gleaming with amusement. "You'll learn to appreciate it, Captain, and who knows, you might even enjoy the challenge." With that, she turned away, gracefully climbing into the bed as though this was the most normal thing in the world. Liam stood there for a moment, dumbfounded. What was he supposed to do now? As he processed the absurdity of the situation, one thing became clear. Whatever Zira's true intentions were, his life, his future, was about to take an unexpected turn. And with that thought, Liam made his decision. He would play along. For now Captain Liam McAllister was beginning to wonder just how far he was willing to let this strange situation go. Zira had claimed his bed, and for reasons he couldn't quite explain, he hadn't kicked her out. Maybe it was the challenge in her eyes, the promise of something more hidden beneath her confident smile. Or perhaps it was the nagging feeling that the fate of humanity, his crew, his planet, was tied to whatever game she was playing. The first night had passed quietly. Zira hadn't caused trouble, but neither had she explained much. She simply stayed in his bed, relaxed, as if the world around her didn't matter. Liam couldn't stop thinking about her, how she'd appeared out of nowhere, how she seemed to know everything about him, how she spoke of testing humanity as if it was a game. The next morning, as sunlight filtered in through the small window of his quarters, Liam sat at his desk, his eyes scanning the star charts and reports on his terminal. He needed to focus on the mission ahead, humanity's fragile position in the galaxy, but Zira's presence was a constant distraction. Just as he was about to dive into his work, the door slid open without warning. Zira stood there, fully clothed this time, her arms crossed over her chest. She had changed into a simple yet elegant outfit that seemed to shimmer with some kind of foreign material, like it had been designed for comfort and efficiency, yet still exuded an air of power. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said smoothly, her tone playful yet firm. Liam sighed, not bothering to turn around. "You're never interrupting, Zira. You're always here." She chuckled softly, stepping into the room without invitation. "Good. I want to get started." "The tests won't complete themselves, you know." Liam shot her a quick glance. "Tests? What kind of tests?" Zira's smile widened. "Oh, Captain, you'll see. I've been watching humanity for a long time. Your species has potential, great potential. But potential isn't enough, is it? Not in a galaxy full of dangers and enemies who'd be happy to wipe you out at a moment's notice." She walked over to the center of the room, where a small, holographic map of the galaxy was floating. She tapped a few buttons and the map zoomed in on a star system at the edge of known space. A small planet, barely habitable, orbited the system's dying sun. "Your first test," Zira continued, her voice calm and measured, "is simple. You're going to explore this planet. It's not much of a challenge, but the environment is harsh. A deadly combination of storms, volcanic activity, and strange flora. Most species would turn back after a few hours, but I want to see what you do, Captain." Liam stared at the map. The planet looked uninhabitable, and yet there was something compelling about it. Perhaps Zira was testing his leadership skills, his ability to make tough decisions. Or maybe she was testing humanity's drive to survive no matter the odds. He straightened up, turning to face her. "You want me to go there? Alone?" Zira raised an eyebrow. "Oh no, Captain, you'll take a team, of course. But the real test is how you lead them. You must decide what risks are worth taking and when to push forward and when to retreat." Liam's heart raced. He wasn't sure if he was more irritated by her arrogance or intrigued by the challenge. Either way, he knew he had no choice but to accept. Humanity's future, in Zira's eyes, was at stake, and that was something he couldn't ignore. "Fine," he said, making his decision. "I'll go, but I'm not doing this for you, I'm doing it for Earth." Zira's lips curled into a small smile. "I know, Captain, and that's exactly what I want to see." The next day, Liam assembled a small team of his most trusted officers, including Lieutenant Sarah Finn, a skilled pilot, Sergeant Marco Reyes, a tough but loyal soldier, and Dr. Clara Yates, an expert in xenobiology. They gathered in the briefing room where Liam stood before them, his expression serious. "We've been assigned a mission," Liam began, addressing the group. "A planet on the edge of known space. Harsh conditions, unpredictable weather, and very little chance of success. But we have no choice. We have to prove that humanity can endure." The team exchanged uncertain glances, but no one spoke. They trusted Liam. If he said they could do it, then they would follow him. "We leave immediately," Liam added, his voice firm. Hours later, the team boarded the Dauntless's shuttle, descending toward the planet's surface. The atmosphere outside was thick with clouds, the sky a swirl of dark reds and grays. As the shuttle descended through the storm, lightning flashed, illuminating jagged peaks that reached up like the spires of some ancient, forgotten city. The ground was a mix of scorched earth and barren rock, and Liam could already hear the low hum of the shuttle's engines struggling against the harsh winds. "Touchdown in 5, Sarah's voice crackled through the comms. Liam braced himself. The moment they touched down, the team's mission would begin. The shuttle landed with a jolt. The ramp lowered and the team stepped into the alien environment. The air was thin, the temperature freezing, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. It was nothing like Earth. The air smelled like sulfur, and the distant sound of volcanic eruptions echoed in the background. Liam took a deep breath. "Stay sharp. Stick together. We're here to gather data and make it back alive." Sarah nodded, her hand tightening around the controls of her rifle. Marco gave a confident thumbs up, while Dr. Yates adjusted her equipment, muttering to herself about the strange readings on her sensor. As they ventured further into the planet's rocky terrain, the environment quickly became more dangerous. The ground was unstable, and they narrowly avoided falling into a series of shifting crevices that seemed to open up without warning. The volcanic activity was constant, sending tremors through the ground and showers of ash into the air. But the real danger lay in the strange flora that began to emerge as they moved deeper into the planet's surface. Giant, thorn-covered plants that seemed to react to movement, reaching out with long, twisting vines. Liam had no idea how they had evolved on such a harsh world, but the danger they posed was real. "Get back!" Marco shouted, firing his weapon at one of the vines that had begun to move toward Dr. Yates. The group took cover, narrowly escaping the dangerous reach of the plants. The plants retreated for now, but Liam knew this was just the beginning. "We need to find shelter," he said, scanning the area. "Somewhere we can regroup and plan our next move." As they pressed forward, the landscape seemed to grow more hostile, and the challenges began to pile up. Each decision they made seemed to get harder, each step taking them deeper into the unknown. And all the while, Zira's voice echoed in Liam's mind. "Prove yourself, Captain. Prove humanity's worth." Back on the Dauntless, Zira watched the team's progress through a screen in her private quarters. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something in her eyes, something that suggested she was pleased with what she saw. Liam McAllister was not backing down. Humanity was not backing down. That was exactly what she had hoped to see, but this was only the beginning. There was more to come, much more. And only the strongest would survive the tests ahead. Captain Liam McAllister wiped the sweat from his brow, his breath coming in heavy gasps as he scanned the horizon. The storm had picked up again, and the volcanoes in the distance were spitting out clouds of ash that made it difficult to see more than a few feet in front of him. The team was exhausted. They had been moving for hours, trying to avoid the deadly plants and shifting terrain. The planet's challenges were relentless. Liam glanced around at his team, Sarah, Marco, and Dr. Yates. They were all exhausted, but there was no time for rest. If they didn't find shelter soon, they would be at risk of succumbing to the environment. The planet was trying to kill them, and it was succeeding piece by piece. "Keep moving," Liam ordered, his voice steady but strained. "We can't stop now. We need to find that shelter." Sarah, the team's pilot, nodded, her hand gripping her rifle tightly. Marco, the gruff soldier, gave a grunt of agreement, though his face was streaked with sweat and ash. Dr. Yates, the xenobiologist, looked pale but determined as she adjusted the sensors strapped to her arm, scanning the area for any signs of danger. Suddenly, Marco stopped, holding his hand up. "Captain, over here," he shouted, his voice cutting through the noise of the storm. Liam's heart skipped a beat as he moved toward Marco. There, in the middle of the rocky landscape, was an entrance to what appeared to be a cave. The edges were jagged and the ground around it was cracked, but it looked like a safe haven compared to the open wasteland they had been crossing. Liam took a deep breath and turned to his team. "We're going in. Stay close and watch your step." They moved quickly, their feet slipping on the rocky ground as they made their way toward the entrance. The moment they crossed the threshold, they were greeted by a sudden change in the air. The storm outside faded into a distant hum, and the temperature dropped slightly. It was dark inside the cave, but the air was fresher, less suffocating than the atmosphere outside. "Do we have any lights?" Dr. Yates asked, her voice slightly shaky from the cold and the stress of the journey. "Yeah, I've got a few," Marco said, reaching into his pack. He pulled out a small flashlight and flicked it on, casting a beam of light across the cave's rocky walls. Liam let out a relieved sigh, his eyes scanning the surroundings. The cave was large, stretching deep into the rock. They had found shelter, at least for now. But they weren't out of danger. The planet was still a hostile place, and they had no idea what might be lurking in the shadows. "Let's make camp here," Liam said, lowering his voice. "We'll rest for a few hours, then plan our next move. Dr. Yates, keep an eye on those sensors." Marco set up a perimeter. As the team settled in, the tension of the journey seemed to ease, if only for a moment. They knew they had to keep moving, but this small respite felt like a brief victory against the harshness of the world outside. As Liam took a seat near the entrance, his mind wandered. Zira's challenge had seemed so simple at first, prove humanity's worth. But now, with the harsh reality of the planet pressing in on him, he was beginning to wonder if he could live up to her expectations. If humanity could. Suddenly, he felt a presence behind him. He turned, expecting to see one of his team members, but instead, Zira stood in the doorway of the cave. She had materialized as if from thin air, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Her expression was unreadable, and for a moment Liam wondered if she had somehow followed them. "How did you—" he began, but Zira interrupted him with a casual wave of her hand. "I've been watching," she said, her voice light. "I always watch. This planet has a way of revealing things about those who venture here, about who they truly are." Liam stood up, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "You said you were testing us, but this is more than a test. You sent us into a death trap. Why?" Zira's smile remained, but it was colder now. "Isn't that the point of a test, Captain? To see how you survive, to see how you make decisions under pressure, to see if you're willing to risk everything, even your life, for your people." Liam took a step forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "We're not some experiment, Zira. You can't just throw us into situations like this and expect us to be your lab rats." Zira didn't flinch. "You misunderstand, Captain. I'm not trying to break you. I'm trying to see if you're strong enough to survive in a galaxy that doesn't care about your ideals or your dreams. You have the potential to be something more than just a footnote in history, but I need to know if you're ready for it." Liam paused, taking in her words. There was something in her tone now, something that made him realize she wasn't just playing games. She was testing him, yes, but perhaps she was also trying to guide humanity toward something greater. The question was, what exactly? He exhaled slowly, trying to calm himself. "And what happens if we fail? If we don't measure up?" Zira's gaze softened just a little. "Failure is always an option, Captain, but only those who face failure head-on are ever able to overcome it. I've watched civilizations fall, and I've seen them rise again. I'm giving you the chance to rise." Liam felt a strange weight lift from his shoulders. Zira wasn't an enemy, not in the traditional sense. She was an outsider, watching from a distance, but she was offering humanity something no one else had, the chance to prove itself. He nodded slowly. "I don't know if we're ready for what's out there, but we'll keep fighting, we'll keep pushing forward." Zira's smile returned, warmer this time. "That's all I need to see." Before Liam could respond, Zira turned and walked out of the cave, disappearing into the darkness of the planet's surface. Liam stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. He had expected a confrontation, an argument, but instead, Zira had given him something he hadn't expected: understanding. With a heavy sigh, Liam turned to his team. They were still gathered around the cave's center, weary but determined. They had come this far and they wouldn't stop now. "All right," he said, his voice stronger now. "We rest here tonight. Tomorrow we continue. This planet won't defeat us, and neither will anything else out there." The team nodded, rallying behind him once again. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for something more, something bigger than any single person. They were fighting for humanity's place in the stars. Back on the Dauntless, Zira stood before the large window of her quarters, staring out into the vastness of space. She had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, but there was something different about humanity. It wasn't their strength alone or their intelligence. It was something else, something harder to define. Perhaps, just perhaps, they were ready for what lay ahead. The galaxy was full of danger, yes, but it was also full of opportunity. And she would be there, watching, as humanity carved its path into the stars. For now, Zira was content to watch, but one day she would take the next step. And humanity would either rise or fall, depending on the choices they made. The night had settled over the cave like a heavy blanket, and the storm outside seemed to have intensified, shaking the ground beneath them. Captain Liam McAllister sat near the entrance, staring out into the darkness, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Zira's visit had left him with more questions than answers, and the weight of her challenge was starting to take its toll on him. He glanced over at his team. They were resting, their bodies worn from the harsh environment of the planet. Marco had found a small patch of flat rock to lie on, his rifle still gripped tightly in his hands, even in sleep. Sarah was sitting against the cave wall, her eyes closed but her mind clearly alert, as always. Dr. Yates had managed to fall asleep, despite the cold and the discomfort. Liam envied their ability to rest. His thoughts were too tangled to allow him any peace. He had been sent here to test humanity's worth, to prove that humans had the strength, intelligence, and resilience to stand beside the galaxy's greatest civilizations. But the further they pushed into the planet's dangerous terrain, the more it seemed like they were failing. It wasn't just the planet's environment that was testing them. It was Zira and what she represented. She had shown him a glimpse of something greater, something that humanity could aspire to if they could survive the test. But what if they could? What if this was a test they wouldn't pass? Liam stood up suddenly, shaking off the dark thoughts that were threatening to overwhelm him. He couldn't afford to dwell on failure. Not yet. Not when they had come this far. He turned to look at his team, his expression firm. We move out at first light. We don't stop until we find the next challenge and we face it head-on. That's how we're going to win. Sarah opened her eyes and nodded without saying a word. Marco stretched, cracking his knuckles, ready for whatever came next. Doctor. Yates, despite her exhaustion, gave him a tired but determined smile. "We're with you, Captain," she said quietly. "No matter what happens." The next day, the team pressed on, their spirits lifted by the brief rest they had managed to get. The storm outside had eased, and though the planet's surface was still harsh and unpredictable, they had learned to adapt. Their movements were faster, their decisions more precise. Each step forward was a small victory in itself. The terrain grew more difficult as they neared the planet's core, the ground becoming unstable and treacherous. Fissures opened up beneath their feet, and geysers of steam shot up unexpectedly from cracks in the earth. Still, they pressed on, driven by a single goal: to survive. At midday, they reached the base of a massive cliff. The rock face was smooth and jagged in places, and it stretched upward, disappearing into the cloud cover. There was no obvious way to climb it, no path forward. Liam scanned the cliffside, his mind racing. They couldn't afford to waste time. They had to find a way to continue the journey. But the cliff was like a wall, and he wasn't sure how they could scale it safely. "That's it," Marco said suddenly, pointing toward the top of the cliff. "There's a ledge up there. We can climb it." Liam followed his gaze and saw the ledge, a narrow, jagged strip of rock that looked like it might be their only way forward. It was risky, but it was the only option they had. "We climb it," Liam decided without hesitation. "But we take it slow. We don't take any chances." Sarah and Dr. Yates exchanged glances, but neither hesitated. They were all in this together. Slowly, they began their ascent, using the sharp outcroppings of the cliff as footholds. The climb was difficult, and the air was thin at the higher altitude, but they kept moving. Halfway up, Marco's foot slipped, and for a moment it looked like he might fall. But with a quick grab of a nearby rock, he caught himself. The others froze, holding their breath. But Marco was a seasoned soldier, and he regained his footing without a word. "Easy there, Marco," Sarah called up to him. "You're making it look too dangerous." Marco shot her a grin, clearly unfazed by the slip. "You know me, Sarah. I'm not going anywhere." They continued the climb inch by inch. Every step forward felt like a victory, but also a reminder of how fragile they were, how close they were to failure. As they neared the top, the winds began to pick up and the cliff became slick with moisture. The team was struggling to keep their balance. Then, with a final push, they reached the top. They collapsed onto solid ground, panting and exhausted but victorious. The view from the top was breathtaking. The planet stretched out below them, a vast landscape of volcanic craters, jagged mountains, and deep ravines. Liam stood up, his legs shaky from the climb but his determination unwavering. "We've made it this far," he said, turning to face his team. "And we're going to make it the rest of the way." As they caught their breath and regrouped, Dr. Yates checked her sensors. "Captain," she said after a moment, her voice tinged with surprise, There's something strange ahead. I'm picking up signals. Signals? Liam repeated, raising an eyebrow. Are we not alone here? I don't know, she said. But whatever it is, it's not natural. These signals are coming from an underground facility somewhere beneath the surface. It's well hidden. Liam's heart skipped a beat. An underground facility, on a planet that was supposed to be uninhabitable. He had no idea what it could mean, but it could be the breakthrough they needed. Or it could be another danger, hidden beneath the planet's surface. We have to check it out, he said, his voice resolute. This could be our way forward, or our final test. The journey to the facility was long and treacherous. The terrain became even more unstable as they moved toward the source of the signal. At times, it felt like the ground might give way beneath them, but they kept going. Every step brought them closer to the unknown. Finally, after hours of navigating the rocky terrain, they found it. An entrance, half buried in the earth, with strange symbols carved into the walls. It was like nothing they had ever seen before, alien technology, something ancient, hidden for centuries. Liam motioned for the team to stop. Stay alert. This could be dangerous. They entered cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air inside the facility was cold and stale, but there was a faint hum that seemed to come from deep within the walls. The facility was vast, stretching out in every direction, with corridors that seemed to go on forever. As they ventured deeper into the complex, they began to find strange equipment, machines that hummed with power but appeared long abandoned. Some of the walls were covered in glowing symbols, which Dr. Yates carefully examined. I don't know what this is, she said, her voice filled with awe, but it's definitely alien. This place is older than anything we've ever encountered. Liam was about to respond when a voice echoed through the dark halls, cutting through the silence. You've come far, Captain McAllister. The team froze. The voice was familiar, Zira. Liam turned, his eyes narrowing. What is this place, Zira? What's really going on here? Zira appeared from the shadows, her figure illuminated by the faint glow of the alien symbols. This, she said, her tone calm but filled with authority, is where humanity's true test begins. Your survival here was never just about proving your strength. It was about your ability to adapt, to understand what lies beyond your world and what you are capable of becoming. Liam's heart raced. What do you mean? What are you testing us for? Zira's smile was almost too knowing. The galaxy has been watching, and now humanity has passed its first trial. But the real journey begins now, Captain. The future of your species, of all species, is at stake. Liam stood still, his mind spinning. This was bigger than he had ever imagined. This wasn't just a test. It was the beginning of something much more, something that would change everything. And now, humanity had to decide. Were they ready to step into the galaxy's larger world, or would they fall back into the shadows of the stars?